Hi, I'm Joe Roth. At New Jersey Sharing Network, we're committed to saving and enhancing people's lives through organ and tissue donation and informing people about our life-saving mission. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, founded by the Jewish community, the New Jersey Education Association, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation, the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor, Office of the Attorney General, Wells Fargo, and by Georgian Court University. Promotional support provided by NorthJersey.com and Local IQ, part of the USA Today network, and by Insider NJ.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. Welcome to One-on-One, coming to you from the NJTV studio in Newark. The Agnes Veris NJTV studio. It's our pleasure to welcome Leslie Killeen, who is registered dietitian, diabetes educator, Summit Medical Group. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We were talking about this right before we got on the air. Is it childhood obesity that's the epidemic? Teen obesity? What is it?
It's childhood and adolescent.
Break it down.
Obesity.
You said in the last 40-ish years, from the 1970s?
And since the 1970s, we've seen 3 times the amount of incidence of obesity in kids.
Because?
Because we see more sedentary activity. We see very little physical activity. We see screen time.
More and more screen time.
More and more screen time. The screen time, the average amount of screen time that a child is on a screen, and it starts even before a year old, is 7 hours a day.
7?
7. Recreational screen time, not counting school.
Leslie, what are the implications of this? Someone says, well, you know, kids are heavier, but what does it mean?
So we've already seen kids with type 2 diabetes at a younger age than we used to see. We see kids with fatty liver disease, which is related to too much fat in the diet. Long term, we're going to see more disability in adults.
Why? What's the connection between disability, obesity and disability?
Because kids that are obese tend to be obese adults, and they already have hypertension, cardiovascular disease, cholesterol problems, type 2 diabetes.
And to what degree, I know people don't talk about this very much, to what degree, Leslie, does this add to the overall cost of health care?
It's immense. First of all, there's lost time from work. There's less productivity. We see sleep apnea that's associated with obesity in children, and it goes into adulthood. Poor quality of sleep.
Talk about this. Sorry for interrupting. So parents watching right now say, yes, and I could and should be doing what?
So we have this acronym that was in 2007, Maine, for their obesity prevention initiative, came up with 5210.
5210. By the way, check on our website. We'll have some information on 5210. Break it down.
So we want to encourage children and adults, actually, to have 5 servings of fruits and vegetables in a day. 5 servings,
okay. So one of our kids says, Dad, I don't like fruit. And Nick, you know who you are. And we've been trying to force him to do it.
So,
what do you sneak it?
No, sneaking's not the best way. The best way is to learn tastes. And we're not going to all like all the fruits and all the vegetables that are available, but we can't all not like all the fruits and the vegetables that are there either.
That's right.
And exposure, studies show that exposure to something at least 10 times.
This is the 5-10. You do 5-2.
So for the 5 fruits and vegetables, you're saying how to get someone to eat a vegetable. When was the last time you tasted this vegetable? Take 2 bites.
Try it.
Try it. There's a division of responsibility around food. Caretakers and parents are responsible for providing healthy food, where and when and how much. The child's going to decide whether they're going to eat it or not. There's no negotiating.
It's interesting. And listen, first of all, there's an economic issue here in terms of you know, we've done a lot of work on food insecurity issues and and food deserts in terms of getting fresh fruit and vegetables. It's not really a different issue. It's complicated because there are those who are not getting the healthy food they need, particularly in urban or rural, poorer areas. Is the obesity problem worse there?
Yeah, in some of the heaviest states are the poorest states because the food that's the cheapest to get is the highest in added fats and sugars.
And processed foods?
And processed foods. So we're seeing children, which we didn't see 35 years ago, that are obese but malnourished.
Obese but malnourished.
So they're not getting adequate vitamins and minerals, adequate antioxidants, but they're getting tons of energy from added fats and added sugars.
You know, the notes here, when you were talking to our producers, you talked a lot about autistic children. What is the connection between autistic children and the need for certain nutrients?
So with autistic children, that's a whole flip side of what we're kind of talking about it. They have sensory issues. So there's limited food acceptance in kids with autism at times. So, for example, a kid might like something that's just crunchy. So a kid who only wants something that's crunchy, he's not going to eat a sandwich. He may only eat one food group. So it's a lot of patience on the caretaker's part. It's a lot of repetition of providing some kind of a new food with familiar foods. It's lack of attention of wanting to be at the table much longer to finish eating. So how
do you help parents? Sorry for interrupting. How do you help parents with children on the autism spectrum when it comes to food and nutrition, given those challenges?
So we try to figure out which textures that child likes.
Which textures?
Which textures they like or what tastes they like. Sometimes kids don't want their food to touch. Sometimes they want to be involved in how that food is being put on the plate. It's difficult, especially for a caretaker, because we're feeders. That's our job as caretakers, is to feed our children. So it's difficult to be patient. And it's difficult sometimes to just say, okay, we're not going to make this be a negotiation. Eat what you can today, and tomorrow we'll introduce that new food again. It's best to not make a huge deal out of it. For all instances with guiding children how to eat, we have to be good role models.
We can't just say it, we have to live it.
Right. So we have to be in front of that child eating the same things that we're expecting them to eat.
Minute left. The peanut allergy issue, update us.
So it was very interesting with the peanut allergy. We used to restrict people, kids and infants, from peanuts if they had a first-degree relative that had a peanut allergy. And recent studies indicated in 2017 what came out was maybe we are actually influencing these peanut allergies because we're not introducing people to the peanut. And then it becomes a higher allergic reaction. So the new recommendations are that a child that has a high risk, and usually how we'll find out if they have a high risk is if they have eczema and or an egg allergy, they should be tested, their blood tested to see if they have an immunoglobulin to peanut allergy.
Whoa, that last,
an immunoreaction to peanut allergy. So
is it dangerous to find out that they have the reaction, or is that a reaction that can be managed?
That's a reaction that can be managed.
I want to make sure that we're accurate with that.
We don't want to introduce a peanut to a high-risk infant.
The risk-reward isn't worth it.
Right. So what we would do is if they didn't have an allergy, we would introduce it at like 4 to 6 months when we're starting solids.
Leslie, thank you.
You're welcome.
Important issues that are not talked about enough. You helped a lot of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is One-on-One. I'm Steve Adubato. Stay with us.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
Welcome, this is Steve Adubato. We're actually on location at the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey. This is part of a series we're doing called Breaking the Cycle. Cycle of abuse, cycle of bullying, particularly among teens. We're pleased to be joined in this conversation by Brian McGovern, CEO, North Jersey Community Research Initiative. Good to see you, Brian.
Thank you.
It's interesting, the population you serve, describe it.
Well, we serve a very variety of people at NJCRI. We have both a medical side and a social service side. The people that we serve are our newer community, which one population happens to be an LGBT youth center. We also have a medical center where we also serve them. We also have mental health, substance use, case managers that help the homeless in that population, food pantry. So quite a variety of services.
But when we talk about abuse, you said to me before we got on the air, you know, we would be a lot better off if we were more tolerant. Why is it so difficult for so many to be tolerant, particularly of the LGBTQ plus community, if you will?
I think that people are not comfortable with what's not them, or they're not exposed to it.
What about if they have a family member, a friend, someone they're close to?
Exactly.
Shouldn't that do it?
Well,
because they know what that person's experiencing?
Well, we hope. And I think sometimes that's what brings us there, is that if we've experienced something close to us and we, you know, someone we care about. But there's religion that gets in the way. Many of the young people we serve are from strong religious backgrounds, so their family are having a hard time with it. To speak to an LGBT person, me being one, you see people that might go through their own personal struggles of accepting their own identity as an LGBT person. What was good for me to do was able to understand, if I'm struggling with this as a young person, what are the people around me that can't even understand what I'm going through? So I had to have my own tolerance with people to have them understand. So I think that's something. I think we're in a different world today.
How so?
I think with the social media, with so much more education online where our young people can get at, where I think years back people were more isolated. 10 years back, it was a different world. So I think today we hear more about gender identity. We hear about bullying in school. We hear about bullying on the streets. In Newark, we have a youth drop-in center for LGBT. We've seen it in our youth drop-in center, which is in the Central Ward.
You're seeing it every day?
Yes. Sadly, we had a young person who had a gun. He was 16 years old, asked the person, "Are you gay?" and then shot him.
That's what happened?
That clearly. That person, sadly, the 16-year-old who identified as straight, ends up going to jail for that. The young man who was shot did survive and did recover, but it's a tragedy on both sides of that.
Are we outraged enough, Brian, when we hear of a situation like that? Are we outraged enough about the bullying and abuse that young people, particularly those in the LGBTQ community, face? Are we outraged enough?
You know, it's hard to say. I think it's hard to be sometimes because there's still fear there, especially in an inner city where maybe it's not as tolerable, LGBT or just in general, other things being different. So we have seen gangs go after our LGBT at times, so we have to be careful. So I think it's almost hard that we can't be. I think what we have to be is more forceful in education. We have to be forceful in exposure and giving positive experiences, and less being angry, but maybe trying to help understand and get people to understand who we are.
Brian, I'm curious about something. You said you identify with the community we're talking about.
Yeah.
Beyond the policy issues, beyond the public television discussion we're having, the forum we're having at the Healthcare Foundation today, describe for folks what you experienced, particularly as a teenager.
For me, what happened with me was I was a jock. I was, very athletic. I was on swim team, run team, track and all this. So what I found was for the effeminate guy, I felt like it was easier for him.
Because?
Because I was this guy that they just saw as the, the macho straight guy, or whatever you want to call back then. So to be out, I wasn't really out. I was on all these teams and everything. I didn't come out till college.
Did you want to, if you get a mulligan, I'll use a golf reference, would you have rather have come out in high school?
I also enjoyed the sports, and I don't think the sports were ready for it at the time.
They're mutually exclusive, coming out and being an athlete competitively in high school?
I think back when I was younger, yes, and I think today it's changed a little bit. But I think it's still a challenge, though, for many of our young people in the sense of mixing those and mixing the different cultures together. We think of your own high school when you were back, the different cliques that were there.
An all-boys Catholic high school in Newark, New Jersey, SS Catholic High School. I often think about that.
Yeah.
And there were some young men
and I knew not one other gay person in high school, as a high school person.
You did not.
No one was out.
No one was out.
Yes.
for us, the young men who came out significantly later.
Yeah.
You know, after the mid 70s when I was there. And I often wonder, how would we have been?
Yeah. But I have to say, what I admire is the young people that can come out. And I think the ones that are brave enough to come out in that. I enjoyed my sports, but maybe I also hid behind it a little bit. So I have to see that. So I admire people that can come out with that. And I think what today, for example, our youth center, it's about 20 years old now. That's something I didn't have, a lot of people didn't have. A lot of people didn't have that, or maybe still don't have resources. That in smaller. Yeah, the resources.
By the way, throughout this interview, your website will be up. And by the way, if someone goes to that website, what kind of help would be there for them, Brian?
A large majority of stuff. When I talk about the youth center, I'm going to focus. We do so much, so please check out the website. But the youth center is LGBT youth center after school till about 8 o'clock at night and weekends. So we try to point out that time. We do everything from sexual health, substance abuse prevention, sexual prevention, safe
sexual
place.
Disease prevention.
Yes, I'm sorry,
right.
HIV or such like that. PrEP is a new medication out for that, so for the older people, the older young adults. We also, it's very much about empowering. We actually use a program called Empowerment Program. It's a curriculum to work with the kids for their self-esteem. It is all about that. They are the leaders of the drop-in center. They run the drop-in center. They do events, community events. So they're going in the community, normalizing LGBT and bringing it out there for people to see. They're doing events multiple times a week. They do dances multiple times a week.
And to that end, by the way, Brian's going to be part of a 10-person, 8 to 10 people will be part of this panel discussion. Last question.
Yes.
That panel discussion is on breaking the cycle of abuse, of bullying, particularly amongst teens. We succeed in that panel discussion if we achieve X. What's X?
I think I go back to respect and tolerance of each other, no matter what your, I might be talking today about LGBT, maybe some of your other people will be talking about other subjects.
There will be.
It's all about respect. Respect everybody for who they are.
Brian, I want to thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I look forward to the conversation.
All right. Thank you.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
Hi, Steve Adubato. I'm coming to you from the North Ward Center, part of our series, Autism, A Different Way of Thinking. We're joined by Michele Adubato. I've known you for your entire life. My sister, Michele Adubato, Chief Executive Officer of North Ward Center, and also founder and president of the Center for Autism. Just had a really important panel discussion. 10 folks talking about autism right here at the North Ward Center. What do you mean when you say a different way of thinking about autism?
I think that we have to look at a person as an individual. And I think that's what came out of that panel, that you can't just look at autism and say, just ABA, full inclusion, inclusion, applied behavior analysis. That's the only thing that works. Everyone's going to work. These are these generalities that people make that sometimes, if we only think that way, then you're only going to get one result.
But how the heck do you make policy, government officials, legislators, others, make policy are helping those with autism when those dealing with autism aren't the same?
That's why they call it a spectrum. So it is truly a spectrum. It goes from one level to another. You can have someone with autism that can get a law degree. You can have someone with autism that is functioning below a 40 IQ, nonverbal, and having all types of behavioral.
Both with autism.
Absolutely, both autism. My experience is mostly for children with really pervasive, what we call pervasive developmental delays. Children that have serious behavior issues, and their IQs are usually below 40.
Talk about the Center for Autism.
Yeah.
It opened up when officially?
7 years ago. 7 years
Describe,
ago.
I was thinking about this before, because I've been there, I've seen it, but I think, what's a typical day? Is there such a thing as a typical day at the Center for Autism?
There's a lot of movement, a lot of activity.
Describe it.
We come in, our students come in, and I call them students. They're 30 years old. They're always going to be 21 and over. And
by design?
Absolutely. It's an adult program specifically designed for people 21 and over.
Real quick, before we keep on talking about the day, what goes on at 21? What changes?
Everything. Life changes. All of the mandatory services that a child will get up to 21 is now not mandatory. You have to go out and you have to seek it.
Who's
and
you?
For the parent. The parent has to go make sure they're on this list, make sure they're on that level. And if you don't, you're not going to get services. And no one's going to call you up and say, guess what? You know, you could have this and you can have that. By the way, when you get services, there are services out there that make sense. It's the idea of, you know, how do you navigate this system? And the system has changed throughout the years. The system has changed as how you attain services.
Complicated.
Very complicated.
Go back to the Center for Autism. Is there job training going on?
Absolutely.
Describe what that looks like.
Job training, pre-vocational skills.
What does that mean?
That means that we're teaching students, again, adult students, how to navigate jobs, how to navigate social circumstances, different forms of jobs, whether it's daycare training, whether it's something specifically with technology. All of our students have an iPad specifically designed for them. That could help with augmenting verbal skills. And so we have different stations for our students to go to, but also outside the community all the time. They're all members of the YMCA. They go out, there could be job training going on, supported employment, which means that we may have a student who's working and they need some help with job coaching, and we provide that.
How great is the demand?
Oh, we have over 45 clients. We could have easily over 100 if I opened it up tomorrow. The demand for these type of programs, it's overwhelming, especially in the urban area. There is nothing in the urban area.
So well, hold on, wait a minute. Nothing in the urban area?
Nothing that I've seen. Nothing that is specifically designed and in Newark. So our program is in Newark. It doesn't mean that you have to come from Newark, but all of our students do, because that's what we're geared toward. We're geared towards the urban area.
The big part of the discussion we had with the panel regarding autism, a different way of thinking, I don't want to do this in great depth because it is in the formal, the panel discussion. The urban-suburban dichotomy here is great.
It's a huge difference. It's autism, but it's treated differently. So it's still autism. Okay, so we're in Newark. Right.
Someone else is in Short Hills.
Right.
8-year-old child.
I'll tell you the difference. Forget about an 8-year-old child. How about a 2-year-old? Okay. How about a parent going, there's something going on here. Why isn't my son or daughter speaking? Why are they in the corner? There's something different. And an urban parent, and I'm not saying all the time, but in general, will be told, wait.
Told by whom?
Doctors who not really clear about what they're seeing. So this idea of educating people, we need to educate doctors.
Clinicians.
Absolutely. To learn the signs and to say, it's better to say, listen, there could be something. Let's get some services for you. That's so much better than saying, wait. Why? If somebody says wait to you, you should immediately, first of all, change your doctor, and second of all, get help. The problem is in the urban area, because of, I think, more of a knowledge base of some of our parents, they trust the, quote, experts.
Is it hard for them to be advocates for themselves?
Absolutely.
Because I think you said in the panel discussion, you said parents are the experts.
Parents know instinctively. We know instinctively if there's something wrong. And when our instincts, there's a reason why a parent goes to a doctor, right? Especially for the child. They instinctively say, wait a minute, something's up. I know something's wrong. And so the expert says, wait.
And you say what to those parents?
Never wait. Hit early, hit often. Never wait. If you think, what's the harm? They're going to get extra services. It's universal. It's not going to harm a child. They aren't going to be stigmatized. You don't get diagnosed until later. So if you can get services, whatever type of early intervention that makes sense, you should get services.
Minute left. Question. You've been in this field for over 25 years.
Yeah.
How we look at those dealing with autism and their families. Changed dramatically in 25 years?
Absolutely. You say field, I say mission. This is my mission. This is my purpose. I believe I've been put here for this purpose. And the way we have dealt with it in the past 25 years has been different. But there's some similarities that I think that we still need to work towards. The different way of thinking, which is the Center for Autism's tagline, which you stole from us, which is okay. It's all right. Okay. But it is that idea. That idea came from those beautiful, wonderful individuals. I think one thing I wanted to say in the panel.
Say it now.
I love these kids. These kids are so beautiful, and they're so truthful. They're authentic. How many times do you see that in your field? I see it all the time. I see it all the time. Yes. They'll tell you about your tie.
Well, you don't like my tie? Really? You're going to go there? We've had issues as siblings, but I was surprised it would come up in such a serious discussion. Listen, I'm proud of you. We're all proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing every day. Thanks, Michele.
Thank you.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 30 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, the New Jersey Education Association, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, New Jersey Sharing Network, the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor, Office of the Attorney General, Wells Fargo, and by Georgian Court University. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
This is Tracy Thompson, New Jersey's acting insurance fraud prosecutor. The state of New Jersey is making learning about and reporting insurance fraud easier than ever. At njinsurancefraud.org, you'll find tips on identifying insurance fraud and a simple, confidential form for reporting it. Report it, end it.